What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another live episode of the Kingdom Crew podcast. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com and ArrowheadAddict.com, covering your Kansas City Chiefs. And today I am joined by, as always, Michael Darcy of KC Sports Report and Bleacher Report. And today on this beautiful Thursday evening, Michael and I will be breaking down or previewing the AFC Championship game, Chiefs versus Ravens. We're going to be talking about Andy Reid, Chiefs injury updates, all kinds of stuff. So thank you all for joining in tonight. Those of you who are going to end up joining us tonight live in the comments, make sure you guys leave your comments and questions down below if you do have any, and we'll be sure to get into some of those as well to keep us busy. But Michael, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm just excited for Sunday. Like, the Chiefs are playing in their 6th straight AFC Championship game. Trip to the Super Bowl's on the line. I'm just so excited. But honestly, outside of that, school's been ramping up, and just trying to make it through.
Yeah, man, and exciting times. The Chiefs are playing in another AFC Championship game, their 6th straight. We talked about how crazy it is, how unprecedented that is. In our last live stream after the Bills game. Now the hype from the Bills game is kind of cooled off a little bit, but still a great win by the Chiefs and really a good team effort to win that game. It took everybody to win that. And I don't think this gets enough credit. We didn't even, talk about this enough on the last episode, but for the defense to stop the Bills there at the 40-something yard line, where the Bills would ultimately end up kicking a field goal, because the Bills were driving before that, and then the Chiefs defense kind of tightened things up as the Bills kind of got into Chiefs territory, and then that's what led Tyler Bass to having to attempt that 44, 45-yard or whatever it was. If that was any closer, who knows what happened. So, I mean, you got to give props to the Chiefs defense for, even though they had a rough game, I mean, when it came down to it, they made plays. And I saw a lot of people talking about Chris Jones too in that game and how he looked like he wasn't really trying early on. Just in 2 plays in that game, Chris Jones saved about 14 points because he batted down a pass in the first half that probably saved a touchdown. And then there in the fourth quarter, he pushed Deion Dawkins, the Bills offensive lineman, into Josh Allen, forcing him to make that throw a little earlier than he wanted. And then they had to settle for a field goal. So
I still don't get why people love to shit on Chris Jones. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, Chris Jones in the playoffs, I would argue he plays his best football. And everybody likes to just rag on him for not having enough sacks. But, guys, he is so valuable to have. And if the Chiefs are going to want to go back to the Super Bowl or win the thing, they're going to need Chris Jones playing at that all-pro level, or it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I got into a debate, actually, the other night with some people on Twitter about Chris Jones, because they had said something earlier this year about how if you don't think the Chiefs can win a championship without Chris Jones, you're crazy. Well, why am I crazy for thinking that? Because they for damn sure don't win last year without Chris Jones in the AFC Championship game. And Chris Jones was the best defensive player in Super Bowl 54. So yeah, I'm pretty comfortable in saying that they don't have a championship without Chris Jones. He is very important to what this defense does. And everyone wants to talk about playoff sacks. But Chris Jones is the reason that other guys get the sack numbers that maybe he should get credit for.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, my logic comes back to, if those sacks are coming, why do you care where they come from? And I feel like Chiefs fans are more enamored with the result of what Chris Jones does rather than what he does to allow different results. And so I think that, yeah, he might not look, pretty in the box score having 3 sacks, but guess what? He allowed George Karlaftis to get 2, and he allows guys like Omenahu to get to the quarterback. So it's just, he is so valuable to this team. And if the Chiefs want to go win the whole damn thing, they're going to need Chris Jones to be that superstar. And that's kind of what he was in that Buffalo game. And I don't expect that to change against the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I agree. We'll save the Ravens preview for later on. I want to get into some of the pieces of news that we got throughout the week since the last time we recorded. So the Chiefs put out an injury report yesterday when they had their first practice, or actually no, it was 2 days ago now when they had their first practice of the week, I believe. And Isaiah Pacheco did not practice. He was one of the players that did not practice, but the team doesn't seem too overly concerned. Isaiah Pacheco seems to be in good spirits. He says he'll absolutely play. I don't think this is any danger of him not playing in this game. He has a sprained or sore toe, something like that. Michael, are you concerned at all about Isaiah Pacheco, despite him saying that he will play? And I think he will play, but does the injury scare you at all? Because toe injuries with a running back, I feel like you got to be a little bit tedious with that.
Yeah, I absolutely think that he's going to play. I mean, you'd have to basically kill him to not play in an AFC Championship game, but it does make you wonder his effectiveness. And he was so good against the Buffalo Bills, and he's been great throughout the playoffs as he's been here. If he's not 100%, they're probably going to try to get Clyde more involved. And Clyde, to his credit, listen, Josh and I, you know how we probably stand on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But as of late, he's been one of their better receiving options and one of their better just viable offensive pieces. So if Clyde gets more of a workload, I mean, his fumbling kind of scares me. But outside of that, he's actually looked pretty good. But I do think Pacheco plays, but how effective will he be with a toe injury? Like you said, a running back with a toe injury is not something that normally goes hand in hand and benefits the running back. So hopefully it doesn't take him too much out of the game plan. I think that he's going to have to be there and ready to play if the Chiefs want to have any chance to win, because he's just so important to this offense.
Yeah, I agree, man. I don't think it's too much to be worried about, but you're definitely going to need him. And I mean, look, Mahomes, he's as big of a competitor as anybody, and he played on a turf toe in 2020, if people remember. The Chiefs training staff, they did enough for him to be able to play with that turf toe. Isaiah Pacheco has that similar fire and competitiveness to Patrick Mahomes, and I think, there's no way he doesn't play, and I think he'll be effective, and they'll do whatever they need to do to that toe to make sure he's ready. I think they're just kind of giving him rest because he deserves it, and they trust him that he doesn't have to practice with this toe injury. So that one's out of the way. So Joe Thuney, and I probably should have let off with Joe Thuney because he's the biggest one, biggest, status of any player, and his injury was the most concerning of any of the ones that we were expecting coming into this week. So Joe Thuney officially has a strained pec, which is a sigh of relief, Michael, because a lot of us were worried that Joe Thuney would have a torn pec. That was the initial concern with Joe Thuney, was a torn pec. Because anytime you hear a pec, especially with like an offensive lineman, or someone in the trenches, you think, oh no, here we go, this thing's going to be torn. Yeah. But he had an MRI. Ian Rappaport says it's just a strain. He also said that it's a long shot for him to play this week, but the training staff is going to do everything it can. I don't know how to feel about this. I mean, obviously it's great that it's not a torn pec, because that means that he has a chance to play in the Super Bowl, even if he doesn't play in this Ravens game. Because if he sits out this game and then you have this bye week before the Super Bowl and then the week for the Super Bowl, that's going to be 3 weeks of rest. And I think Joe Thuney would be good to go after that. The question will be this game, whether or not he plays. I don't know. I mean, for the typical offensive lineman, I'd say no shot. And a lot of people probably still think no shot. But, Joe Thuney he's a tough guy. A couple years ago, I think it was 2021, he had a broken hand and stayed in the game and still played with the broken hand. So Joe Thuney does not like to miss games. He does not like to miss snaps. I don't know, Michael, what's your feeling here with the Joe Thuney injury?
The strain was a sigh of relief. If it was a tear, he's done. Like, you can't play with a torn pec. But I don't think he's going to play in this Ravens game. And that's going to harm the Chiefs a little bit in terms of running the ball, just because he is so good on the interior. But I do think that they have, like, Nick Allegretti, I think, is good enough to fill in and at least, mitigate what the Ravens are going to try to do defensively. But, yeah, I think if he has 3 weeks of rest, he could absolutely play in the Super Bowl. He wouldn't be 100%, but at this point in the season, nobody's 100%. And so the fact that it was just a pec strain and not a pec tear, it kind of gives us hope for the future. We still have to beat the Ravens and get to the Super Bowl, but it is comforting to know that if we do, advance, there is a chance that he comes back and play, because the Chiefs are going to need all the offensive help that they can use in a Super Bowl, especially. And we remember what happened a couple years ago in the Super Bowl. Offensive linemen, you don't want hurt. And I definitely want Joe Thuney on that football field if they do advance. But I do think that he's probably out this week. I think that's optimistic.
I don't know. I think that one's going to be a game time decision. I really do, because Joe Thuney's a tough man. He is a tough guy, but I think ultimately what's probably going to happen is Joe Thuney is going to want to play, and the Chiefs coaching staff is going to say, no, we're not letting this happen. And I think that's also going to be because they're comfortable with Nick Allegretti replacing Joe Thuney, because Nick Allegretti is a plus player. Like, he is as good of a reserve as you can have coming off the bench. Nick Allegretti can put in good snaps. He's got some good athleticism. He's maybe a little undersized, but he plays pretty nasty. I mean, there was a couple years ago in the wild card versus the Steelers where Nick Allegretti put TJ Watt on his ass and then caught a touchdown pass in a playoff game. So I like Nick Allegretti, man. He's a good player, and I think he's a viable replacement for Joe Thuney if that's what it has to be.
Me too. Like, I like Allegretti, and I like Allegretti in the running game. I think he's, like you said, he's mean. He's fierce. I think that they could run the ball behind Allegretti. And so if it has to be Allegretti, I'd rather it be Allegretti than, remember a couple years ago when it was Cam Irving?
Oh my gosh, Cam Irving. Cam Irving was the reason that Mitchell Schwartz's snap streak ended. Mitchell Schwartz had some crazy Iron Man snap streak where he didn't come out, and Cam Irving fell on him for a play and he had to come out. I'm still mad at Cam Irving for that. But there's the Joe Thuney coverage. Willie Gay had a neck injury that knocked him out of the Bills game. He's been a limited participant the past couple days. And he said on his personal Twitter account that he'd be ready to go for game day. So I'm not too concerned there.
Yeah, I think he'll probably play. It is interesting that we're referencing Willie Gay's Twitter, because he said something a while ago that he might not be coming back next season.
I thought that was odd timing. Like,
very
sure,
odd.
that might be true, and sure, you might be thinking about your contract, but it just seems weird. Like, you're in a playoff run, you're tweeting about how this might be your last game in Arrowhead. I don't know. That was weird to me. I don't think we ever did talk about that, but kind of strange.
It was very odd. And like, what is Willie Gay going to demand on the open market? Like, he's good, but he's not good like that.
It really never seems like his skill set translated and his potential came to fruition. Like, he's always had the potential and the athleticism is crazy with him, but he's never really been able to put it all together. So his free agency is going to be interesting, but we'll see what happens.
I will say though, like, his, like, athletically, I think, like, right now the Chiefs linebacker core is better than it's been in the Mahomes era. Like, you have three linebackers that are fantastic. We won a Super Bowl with Damian Wilson and Anthony Hitchens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we can work with Willie Gay, Nick Bolton, and Drew Tranquill.
Yeah, and that's not even mentioning Chanel, who's put in some good snaps for them this year too.
Yeah.
So that's that. I also wanted to talk about this. So Prince Tega Wanago got activated off IR this week. That's actually an underrated boost to this offensive line room that I wasn't quite sure that they would be getting back. I didn't expect Prince Tega back this year, but he was activated and he was a full participant both Wednesday and Thursday. If one of your tackles goes down, or, you know, he could play for one of them, or, you know, he could even compete on the inside if they want to do. I mean, they'll probably go with Allegretti there. I don't think they'll have Prince Tega Wanago just jump in after coming off IR, but that's some underrated offensive line insurance getting Prince Tega Wanago back, because I think there was a game this year, I think it might have been Chicago, where Donovan Smith had to first come out and Prince Tega Wanago came in, and he wasn't too bad. So yeah, I mean, nice little boost there.
Because is Wanya Morris on IR, or am I just...
No, so I was going to mention him next. So Wanya Morris had a concussion, but he's been a full participant the past 2 days, so it seems like he's also back as well.
Okay. Well, he might be a guy that you could also throw inside and just, yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking, like, worst case scenario, injury wise, like, who could we have fill in?
Yeah, it definitely feels like Nick Allegretti will get the leg up there because he's the veteran. He has experience both in the regular season and playoffs. But, Wanya Morris is not a bad option to fall back on if, something were to happen even to someone else, or if Nick Allegretti doesn't work out, or if he's struggling and you got to make a change. But that's pretty much it as far as the injury report goes. The big one was Joe Thuney. We'll see what happens with him. He's not practicing this week. He didn't practice today. I doubt he'll practice tomorrow. And you kind of know the rule with Andy Reid. If you don't practice, you don't typically play. So we'll see. I think Joe Thuney is really going to want to play, and he's going to try, but I think the coaching staff will probably shut that down.
Yeah. Because he's not even a limited participant. He just hasn't practiced. And so, he might be in the position where, okay, this is Joe Thuney, and he says he's ready to go, so he's ready to go. But normally you're right. Like, you're not playing.
Yeah. And when you have a strained pec as an offensive lineman, like, you cannot reach and you cannot play with the same power you could. Joe Thuney would be lucky to be at like half power, half strength with a strained pec. It would be really tough. And not only, it's a little bit easier because he's an interior offensive lineman as opposed to like a tackle, but also, Joe Thuney does help a lot with double teams and helping the tackle to his left. So it'd be really tough. I'd be shocked and impressed if he played.
But kind of like we were talking about with Isaiah Pacheco, you don't want him playing and then not being effective. And because it just hurts the team at that point, especially when you have Allegretti who could step in and do the job better if the guy is hurt. So, again, hopefully he takes his time getting back, but also comes back quickly. But if he's not going to be effective, there's no point in rushing him back.
Right. And I think this offensive line unit is still very formidable if Nick Allegretti does come or have to come in. I think, the Ravens defense is tough. We'll talk about them. They led the league in sacks this year, but I still think that you can go up against it with Nick Allegretti as your starting left guard.
I don't look at the Ravens defense, and this is going to sound crazy, but they don't fear. Like, I'm not scared of them. Maybe I should be, especially with our offense being so inconsistent, but like, I don't fear it. We've seen with Patrick Mahomes as our quarterback that we can beat multiple teams with the best defense in the league. And guess what? We've beaten teams with the best defense in the league, and we had nowhere near a top 5 defense. We do have the number 2 defense in the NFL behind the Baltimore Ravens, and the Baltimore Ravens don't have 15 on their team, and he's the biggest X factor. He's the biggest, pass rush, secondary, linebacker core you could possibly have, because he's going to go out there and put up points. And we saw it against Buffalo, even when this offense has been so inconsistent and frustrating this year, he still found a way to get it done against a playoff team.
Yeah. Like I said, we'll talk about it. We'll get into the preview here in a minute. There was one more bit of news that I want to talk about with you, Michael. I know we kind of discussed it before we went live, but Adam Schefter earlier today went on ESPN and mentioned the possibility of Bill Belichick taking over for Andy Reid after this season if Andy Reid were to retire. I know people have gotten tired of the Andy Reid is going to retire, talking point, because they don't believe it's going to happen. I don't believe it's going to happen this year, honestly. But I think it is a lot closer than people want to admit, because this is now the second year in a row where like Andy Reid retirement talk has really heated up. We got it from Jay Glazer last year prior to the Super Bowl. He said that Andy Reid might retire after the Super Bowl if the Chiefs won. Andy Reid shut that down. Then, we have Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk saying that Andy Reid could retire and that the Chiefs brass is bracing for it. You have to be wary of, Mike Florio's reporting, but then Adam Schefter comes out today and says, and there's been a lot of smoke around it, more smoke than you can really truly ignore. We'll start with this. Michael, do you think Andy Reid retires after this year? How much stock do you put into that possibility?
I don't think that he retires, but at the same time, if the Chiefs won the Super Bowl this year, it might be like, okay, I don't know. Like, Andy Reid does not have more than 5 years left of coaching in him. I think right now we're wondering if he has more than the next 6 months, or I guess the next 2 months. But I don't think that he retires after this year. But, man, I mean, his days are limited because I think at a certain point, like, he's getting up into his late 60s, early 70s. He's not going to want to keep coaching. He's already, done so much with Patrick Mahomes, and maybe he want to stay for a little bit longer to kind of ride it out with Patrick Mahomes and further build his legacy. But at the same time, like, I think he's the kind of guy that would like to spend a lot of time with his family and his grandkids. And so, yeah, I do think he's going to retire a lot sooner than people think. Is it going to be after this season? I don't think so. But it is interesting to think that if we won a Super Bowl, if he would go out. Because I do think that Andy Reid would want to go out as a champion. And, I mean, it's not really easy to win Super Bowls. I mean, he knows that. For 20 years, he never got one. So maybe he tries to continue to capitalize on the success with Patrick Mahomes. But I can also see him winning another Super Bowl and then saying, you know what, I've had a great career. Let's just pass it off.
Yeah, also, I don't know if you remember this, and I forget who exactly reported it, but I remember I wrote about it for Arrowhead Addict, but when Matt Nagy was hired as the offensive coordinator, there were talks that Matt Nagy would be the head coach in waiting for Andy Reid here in the next few years after Andy Reid retires. And I know Mahomes and Nagy have a really good relationship, and they were maybe potentially grooming Nagy to be the next head coach. I'm not sure too many Chiefs fans would be a huge fan of that idea at this point, but Adam Schefter, in addition to reporting that Andy Reid may retire, he reported that Bill Belichick could take over for Andy Reid. I don't think Adam Schefter gets this from nowhere. Adam Schefter is about as good as it gets when it comes to sources in the NFL. This is yet another person saying, talking about this possibility of Andy Reid retiring. It's just, there's too much smoke around it to ignore. I don't think Andy Reid will retire this year, but it is interesting to think about. And I mentioned this to you before we started, but Bill Belichick was supposed to be the favorite for the Atlanta Falcons head coach opening. And the Atlanta Falcons actually ended up going with a surprise and Raheem Morris, the Rams coordinator. So now that Belichick's not going to Atlanta, it's like, okay, where's Bill Belichick going? Because you got to think Bill Belichick still really wants to coach. I mean, that's all he's ever known. That's what he wants to do. He was interviewing for other coaching jobs, but Seattle seems unlikely and the Commanders seem unlikely for Belichick. I don't know, man. I mean, that, could he be waiting out for something else to open up? Maybe like a job with an elite quarterback that is a ready-made Super Bowl contender? Because here's the thing with Belichick, and here's what's interesting about that, is Atlanta, well, I think it would have been a good fit for Atlanta's young, talented team. That is also a team that's a little bit of a project for guys old as Belichick to be taking over. I think if Belichick wants to keep coaching, he prefers to take over a ready-made Super Bowl contender, because really what Belichick is trying to do at this point is pass up Don Shula for most wins as a head coach in NFL history. And I think that's all he's trying to do. I don't know if he can reach that goal with the Atlanta Falcons job. So the Kansas City Chiefs would be a job in which he could do that. And I know we were pipe dreaming before about like, what if Andy Reid stepped down and was the offensive coordinator and Belichick became the head coach or co-head coach or something like that. And he had Reid and Belichick on the same staff. That would be the best case scenario. But also, I do love Andy Reid as much as he does annoy the hell out of me sometimes. I love Andy Reid, and I think Andy Reid also has his own goals as a head coach. I think Andy Reid does want to be the winningest coach in NFL history. Andy Reid's also getting up there in playoff wins too. Like, he's very close to being the winningest head coach in playoff history as well. So I don't know, lot of angles to come from here, but what are your thoughts?
Well, really quickly, you got to think about it also logically. Andy Reid has won everywhere he's been with every quarterback for the last 25 years. And Bill Belichick, after the GOAT in Tom Brady left, had a lot of trouble and a lot of just losing. And so I almost think that we are maybe starting to have a debate. Maybe if Andy gets a couple more Super Bowls, who is the better all-time coach? Now, I know Belichick has a lot more wins, but at the same time, like Andy Reid, I mean, it's not like an amount that Andy Reid could never hit, especially if he coaches a couple more years. I do think that, Andy Reid has a real shot of putting himself, up there with the best coaches of all time, maybe the best coach of our, lifetime, specifically Josh and I's lifetime.
Yeah.
If he could win a couple more Super Bowls. And for that reason is a reason for him to keep coaching and still coach for the Kansas City Chiefs. Bill Belichick is a very interesting thought because I almost wonder if he would want what Andy Reid got when he came to Kansas City. Full control over the roster, full control basically over the drafting process and who he hires. And believe it or not, guys, I don't want Bill Belichick in charge of any roster decisions. Mm-hmm. Bill Belichick has shown, especially recently, that he cannot draft, whether it's a quarterback or a wide receiver. He can't draft offense. He can't deal with an offense. Defensively, there might not be a better guy in NFL history. So from a defensive perspective, of course it'd be awesome to have Bill Belichick. But offensively, and I know the saying is defense wins championships, when you have Patrick Mahomes, it's offense wins championships. And so I think it's more important that you have a dynamic offense, someone that understands the West Coast style, what the Chiefs like to do, than somebody who's going to want to come in, do it his way, because Bill Belichick's not going to listen to anybody else. In his mind, he's the best coach that's, ever walked the earth, so to speak. So why would he take, even advice from another great coach like Andy Reid? I think he'd want to come in and instill the Patriot way in Kansas City. And I'm not sure that would really fly with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and the system of guys that have already been here for the last 5 years and have made it work and had this sustained model of success. So I don't think Belichick would work for that reason, just because, of the way that he would approach coaching and what he would want in return in terms of like final say and roster decisions. I want Brett Veach and Andy Reid calling the shots. I don't want, Bill Belichick making roster decisions. And also, Bill Belichick's 71 years old. Andy Reid's like 65, 66. So an older guy would take over for Andy Reid, who retired because of his age. Kind of makes you wonder, why do that for, because how much longer does Bill Belichick have in the coaching tank? He can't be coaching into his 80s, right?
No, I wouldn't think so. It seems like he wants to be a head coach. If Andy Reid's here, I don't think there's any scenario in which Bill Belichick would be the head coach. But because this is coming up again, this topic with Andy Reid, and then you're seeing the smoke with Bill Belichick from Adam Schefter, and then Belichick didn't get the Falcons job. It just makes you wonder just a little bit, hey, maybe this thing's more realistic than we thought. But I don't know. I just... Andy Reid has said it before. He's having too much fun to retire. But I think really what's happened is Andy Reid to his inner circle has been like, yeah, I may coach a few more years. I might be ready to retire soon. And, that's the same way as like, our parents talk about their jobs. They want to retire soon, or they feel like they're going to retire soon. But, everyone says stuff like that, but they know that they're going to be working for a while longer. I think Andy Reid, he's not decided on anything. But I don't think he's that close to retirement. I think he'll definitely be coaching this team for a few more years, if that makes sense, really, with the analogy I just made. I think he's probably told people, I might coach a few more years, but he doesn't know. He's just taking it day by day.
Andy Reid would be very foolish to give up on what they have right now. I mean, right now, you're in an AFC Championship game with Uber drivers and garbage men at wide receiver. You go through an offseason. Who knows what happens in this AFC Championship game? Maybe you win the whole thing. Let's just say you win the whole thing. That's 3 Super Bowls. Andy Reid's not going to want to hang it up. He's going to say, okay, we're chasing a record right now. We could get to 4 or 5. Who knows? But
I think, Michael, I think Uber drivers everywhere feel a little bit disrespected right now, because at least Uber drivers know how to run their routes.
They know how to run their routes, and they can pick up things on time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, I don't think Andy Reid's going to retire after this year. especially with all the success. Like, why would Andy Reid give up his job, give up what he has in Patrick Mahomes? I mean, Patrick Mahomes kind of is his son, so to speak. Like, he has grown with him ever since he was a rookie. And I don't think that he wants to give up, that, relationship, that coaching player relationship. But also at the same time, Andy Reid knows what Patrick Mahomes is capable of leading them to. And so I think that right now he's going to take this until they have maybe a down couple years, like where, the Patriots had like a 10-year window where they didn't do anything. Something like that would have to happen, in my opinion, for Andy Reid to give it up.
Yeah, and I think Andy Reid would probably be punching himself years down the line if he just kind of walked away from the game with Patrick Mahomes in his prime, like election and, get a few more accolades and rack up wins, just coaching Mahomes for a few more years. I think he'd really be kicking himself later down the road if he walked away from that right now.
Yeah, because does he not want a couple more Super Bowls? Knock on wood. Like, he's got that opportunity, and so when you have that opportunity, you make hay when the sun's shining, and it would be very foolish of him to just walk it away.
Yeah, I agree. But we'll move on from this topic because I think that's enough with that. And people probably think we're crazy for even talking about it. But I mean, there's been a lot of news clippings about it as of recently. So I figured it was an interesting discussion. Let's get into previewing this AFC Championship that is happening this Sunday, Michael. Everyone's excited. Chiefs versus Ravens for another chance to go to the Super Bowl. What are your initial feelings on this game? Like how confident are you feeling? Sorry. And then, I know you said you're not scared of the Ravens, but what kind of challenge do you think they present to the Kansas City Chiefs?
So the Ravens are the best team in the NFL. I think that offensively they're stacked. They've got everything. Defensively, they're stacked. They got everything. But if it's anything that I've learned from watching this Chiefs team, and maybe not this specific version of the Chiefs, but it really doesn't matter what the other team is like because they don't have Patrick Mahomes. That Eagles Super Bowl, that Eagles defense was way better than our defense. And honestly, they probably should have stopped our offense. And, in the 49ers Super Bowl, we should not have won. They were up by 10. They had all the momentum. They had the pass rushers. They had the secondary. They had the number one ranked defense, and it didn't matter. So, yeah, I respect the Ravens. I think they're a great team. I think they're better than the Chiefs on paper, but they don't have maybe the best quarterback we've ever seen play the sport in Patrick Mahomes. And so, yeah, like I have a confidence in that. But at the same time, I fear the Ravens a little bit, or I don't fear the Ravens, but I respect the Ravens enough to be like, okay, this is going to be a shootout. Like, this is going to be something that is like a chess match where either team could win this game. I'm not going to be shocked if the Chiefs don't win it. And honestly, it makes more sense to pick the Ravens. On paper, why would they not beat the Chiefs?
Feels like most people are picking the Ravens. Most national media is picking the Ravens.
And that makes me want to bet on the Chiefs even more, because if it's anything that we've learned from covering this team, is that when you bet against the Chiefs, they more likely than not will find a way to overcome those betting odds and win. And in the Super Bowl last year against the Eagles, didn't everybody pick against the Chiefs?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Eagles were seen as the big favorite. I think they were like 3.5-point favorites or something like that. Most national media talked about how they had so much more talent. I mean, you want to talk about the Eagles are a perfect analogy to what you're trying to say, because the Ravens on paper have the stacked roster. They had remember the Eagles had the number one scoring defense coming into the Super Bowl last year, and Mahomes just diced them up. That pass rush of the Eagles, my God, they had double-digit sack guys across the line, 0 sacks in the Super Bowl. Remember, guys? Like, that happened less than a year ago. And so I think there are some parallels to be drawn here. Everyone wants to talk about the Ravens' number one defense, and they are a great defense, but sometimes it really just doesn't matter when you're going up against Patrick Mahomes. Great offensive players, great elite quarterbacks will find ways to pick apart your defense no matter what. And if Patrick Mahomes has enough protection in this game, if the Joe Thuney injury doesn't hurt them too much and the offensive line holds up, I just think that, you shouldn't be too concerned with the offense. And Mahomes is actually looking to set an NFL postseason record for consecutive postseason games without an interception. If he goes without an interception in this game, that'll be 6 straight games without an interception. That'll be an NFL record.
I also think that now that I'm thinking about it, we look back at some of the games the Chiefs have lost in the playoffs. The Bengals in 2021, no one expected the Bengals to beat the Chiefs. And I overlooked the Bengals back then because the Chiefs were hot. They were coming off of a win against Buffalo in the final seconds. I mean, we kind of just looked at Cincinnati like, okay, like you have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and you're just you're lucky to be here kind of thing. And the Patriots back a couple years ago when they had Tom Brady, it's like, all right, like, you're coming to our house. We're better than you. That lost. And in the Super Bowl, we were, rolling, and we faced that Bucs team, which on paper, I think we were better, and we lost. So I like being the team that's not projected to be better and projected to win. And it seems like when we're not projected to win, we win. And when we are projected to win, we lose.
Yeah. I was going to say the 2018 AFC Championship game, you said it before we started going live, but we feel like the Patriots in 2018 and the Ravens kind of feel like us from back then. The game is at home. They're riding high. This is the furthest they made it in the playoffs in a really long time. They have a really good quarterback. Everyone's excited. But Mahomes, Kelsey, Reid, they've been in this moment before. They're more seasoned with playoff experience, and they're going to come in and they're going to break the Ravens' hearts because even though the offense has been far from elite this year, that Patriots offense from 2018 was one of the worst they've ever won a Super Bowl with, but their defense was really good and they had an elite quarterback, and that's why they won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, in that AFC Championship game, Tom Brady, they scored more than 30. It was like 35 to 31, was it? I can't even remember what the score, but they dropped 30, and that team 2 weeks later dropped 13 points. So when your great quarterback had to be great, he found a way to get it done.
That speaks to how bad the 2018 Chiefs defense was.
Yeah, they were bad. They were really bad. If we had this Chiefs defense back then, we would smoke the Patriots, but we don't.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But
oh my gosh,
I think with this defense,
2018 offense,
with this defense of the Chiefs, like Lamar's going to have more problems against our defense than we will against their defense.
Yeah, I agree. Let's get into that because I have stats pulled up. I'm interested to talk about this. So Lamar Jackson, I think it is worth noting that he is like 2-3 in postseason games in his career. He's not really a big game player. He's not really a come from behind player. If the Ravens get down in this game, that's not good for them. I've been looking at the numbers. The Ravens were 32nd last in the NFL in pass play percentage. They do not throw the ball. Their offense is run, 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 run. They were number 1 in rush play percentage. So really the Chiefs in this game just need to be selling out to stop the run. That matchup does scare me just a little bit though, because the Chiefs last week against the run of the Bills, they were not that great. The run defense has been the Achilles heel of this Chiefs team all season long. They have injuries on the defensive front right now. Derek Nottie isn't there. I know Derek Nottie has not been, what he was for the past couple of years, but it's either Derek Nottie or Matt Dickerson.
I saw Mike Pinnell was playing a lot of snaps last week.
Yeah, he was.
Which that gives me flashbacks to 2019.
Well, I was going to bring that up because the Chiefs' run defense in 2019 was not very good, worse than this one. And all the talk coming into that game was, Derrick Henry. No way the Chiefs can stop Derrick Henry. He's the best running back in the league. They shut down Derrick Henry. And I think when this Chiefs defense is committed to stopping the run, they can stop. Like in the past, it's really been a lack of effort combined with a lack of talent. I don't think it's necessarily a lack of talent. Like the defensive tackle room isn't very good, but it's not so much a lack of talent as it is a lack of effort. effort. The effort just isn't there stopping the run throughout the regular season. And also, some would point out that not being able to stop the run versus the Bills was also kind of by design, because the Chiefs were really selling out to stop the pass in that game. And they did allow Josh Allen to get some cheap yards on the ground. But also in the second half, James Cook actually ran for negative yards. So the run defense did tighten up. You have Drew Tranquil. You'll probably have a healthy Willie Gay, Nick Bolton, Leo Chenal. Chris Jones, we know when he wants to be, can be a really good run defender. So Spags is stressing run defense this week and talking about how much the Ravens run the ball. I do think the Chiefs can shut that down. And then the Ravens are going to be forced to throw. And it's not that the Ravens are necessarily a bad passing team, but they don't like to throw the ball. And you could get them out of their comfort zone if you force them into throwing the ball. And especially if you can get them down early, which is something this offense hasn't really been able to do to teams this year. But if Mahomes can come out firing quick and get up 14-0 real quick or something like that, then if you're a Ravens fan, you're going to be like, oh God, here we go again.
Well, the thing is also, and we've talked about this for years, whenever the Chiefs were facing off against the Ravens, make Lamar Jackson beat you with his arm. Make it happen. Don't let him beat you with his legs, because he's just way too quick and dynamic on the ground. And I mean, the Chiefs have always kind of had the Ravens number outside of that one game. I think it was 2021? I can't remember what year it was.
Talking about the Ravens game, regular season?
The Ravens game where they lost on the Clyde fumble.
Yeah. Yeah, Devontae Freeman had like his longest run since 2017 against us. They signed him off the street.
Yeah, like that was the only game they've ever lost. Mahomes has ever lost to the Ravens. And outside of that, like, you know, outside the Clyde fumble, they should have won that game. So, like, I'm not really, super concerned that Lamar Jackson's going to – like, there was a talking point that was going out on Nick Wright's show earlier this week with Chris Broussard that there was a possibility the Ravens blew out the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. That's not happening. Lamar Jackson's not going to dice up this defense with his arm. And like you said, if they solely commit to stopping the run, I have a hard time thinking that they're not going to be able to do that.
Oh, yeah. And with Spags as your DC and having the defensive backs come out and help up in the run game, and it's not like the Ravens have a feared passing attack. I mean, Zay Flowers is good. You got to watch him. But, OBJ, Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews coming off of injury, I think we can work with that. That's not a feared passing attack. The run game is what you're going to have to be worried about with Gus Edwards and Lamar Jackson and those guys. I'll be interested to see what Spags decides to do, though, because he was afraid of Josh Allen's leg. So he had there was also a clip on Twitter, too, of Joe Cullen talking about how you don't want to win up the arc. He was talking to the defensive line. He's like, don't do it. Like, obviously, typically a defensive end is going to want to win up the arc, but he didn't want to do that because it would give Josh Allen a running lane. And so Joe Cullen and Spags kind of took away those running lanes from Josh Allen. I'll be interested to see if they have a similar approach in this game, where they just kind of play contain for most of the game with the defensive ends, because the pass rush didn't get to Josh Allen too much, but obviously we've seen at this point that was kind of by design.
Yeah, listen, the Texans pass rush got to him, and we saw how that ended up going. So,
yeah, well, and the Ravens have some offensive line troubles too. Like, well, Ronnie Stanley, for example, one of their starting tackles, like he's been in and out all year with injury. I can't remember who else it was on their O-line was dealing with injury. So the offensive line of the Ravens can be exploited.
Yeah, and I think we definitely have the pass rush to do it, but also at the same time, like, they're going to run the ball so much and not drop back to pass. So sell out to stopping the run. And, even if they, do have offensive line problems in pass pro, make sure that you can hold up with their run blocking, because the Ravens are a run first team. And I would hate for them to, say, okay, we can exploit this offensive line and get to the quarterback. And the game plan for the Ravens is we're going to throw the ball 45 times. Did I say throw a run? We're going to run the ball 45 times.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Just make it impossible for this Chiefs team to get off the field.
Yeah, for sure. I think that if you can stop the run in this game effectively and get the Ravens into throwing the ball because they have to, the odds are going to be in your favor. And the Ravens, I forget where exactly they rank in offense, but they have had a pretty good offense this year. That's why they made it this far. And you saw what they did to the Texans. I mean, in the second half, they really just kind of ripped the Texans apart. And the Texans, were number 2 in stopping the run in the NFL this year. And that does scare you a little bit because it's like, well, if the number 2 rushing defense can't even stop Lamar Jackson, then what the heck are we going to do? But I think we've seen, especially with Spags at the helm, that when this team really wants to stop a really good running team, they can.
Or at least just limit it to where our offense can, put up the same amount of points that they do. And I would like to see the time of possession change in this game. Buffalo had way too much time offensively for my liking.
Yeah.
I'd like the Chiefs to have that and the Ravens to not.
Yeah, and you got to feel good about this Chiefs defense too, because they're coming off a rough game against Buffalo, which not only is going to motivate them to be better in this game, but also I just think it's not a very good bet to bet that this Chiefs defense has 2 bad games in a row.
Yeah, because that just hasn't been the trend. And granted, they haven't really faced an offense like the Baltimore Ravens this year. I wish we would have played this team back in September, but we didn't. So we're definitely going into this game a little bit more blind than we are in years prior. Like, we kind of knew what to expect from Buffalo. And it's not that we don't know what this Ravens team does, but when you get to play the team earlier in the year that you play in the playoffs, it just makes it a lot easier, I think, because you're just more familiar with what they might do. And you also have game film to go back and watch and maybe pick apart and say, okay, well, they did this really well in this situation and we didn't do this very well. So I do think that we had a comfortability with the Buffalo Bills, and we were, pretty comfortable to face them. Not that we're not comfortable to face the Ravens, but there is a little bit more of an unknown there. And so I'll be interested to see what Steve Spagnuolo has done defensively to kind of, maybe throw some different stuff at Lamar Jackson. I know in years prior, they would have, I know Josh loves him, former Battlehawks quarterback Jordan Teamu be
I remember that
squad guy that would simulate Lamar Jackson. You really can't simulate Lamar Jackson, but, a guy with speed is a lot easier to kind of replicate than like Blaine Gabbert replicating Lamar Jackson. So, I do think that the Chiefs are going to have something up their sleeve for Lamar Jackson. Spags always has something cooking in these big kind of games. And the coaching is going to be listen, John Harbaugh is a good head coach. Don't get it twisted. But I don't think that, he's going to outcoach Andy Reid. And I like our DC more than their DC because I think Spags shows up in the big games, and we don't know that from the Ravens defensive coordinator.
Well, you just go back to the experience aspect, and this coaching staff, this team is just more experience in these moments. I think you really have to like that about them, even despite the fact that this game is on the road. And we pointed out already, this Chiefs team, Patrick Mahomes, everyone made a big deal about last week being his first road playoff game. His record on the road is, I think, like almost better than his record at home. Like, Patrick Mahomes does not care about playing on the road.
Yeah, like, it almost makes you feel better that he's playing on the road because, like you said, like, he hasn't lost a road divisional game. He hasn't lost a road playoff game yet either. But I do think that, the pressure's not on the Chiefs in this game. It's on the Baltimore Ravens. Can they, overcome the Chiefs, the big bad wolf in the AFC? And guess what? That pressure was way too much for Buffalo to handle. And Buffalo is a better playoff team than Lamar Jackson has been in years prior. And Buffalo hasn't been a good playoff team. So what makes, you think that Lamar Jackson's going to pull this, rabbit out of a hat and find the magic to beat a guy that is pretty hard to beat in the playoffs?
Yeah, and I've been surprised many times by the Chiefs already this postseason. I wouldn't be surprised now at this point if they were able to shut down the Ravens, and Mahomes plays some sort of perfect game or as close as you can get to a perfect game because Mahomes, I mean, my God, against the Buffalo Bills, and I know their defense was beat up a little bit, but they averaged nearly 8 yards per play, and they averaged as high as 9 yards per play in that game. And I don't know if people understand how insane that is. And this Ravens defense is really good, and their pass rush is good. But this almost kind of reminds me of the Eagles Super Bowl from last year. Everyone hyped up their pass rush and their number one scoring defense, and Mahomes really just diced them up. And that was on a bad ankle. He won't be on a bad ankle in this game.
No, that's why you got to feel really good about our chances. And as long as he stays upright, then I think the Chiefs are going to have a really good chance to win this game. And like you said, the odds that our defense has two back-to-back bad games, not really something that I'm worried about. Again, the magic number all season has been 25 points. The Chiefs score more than 25 points, barring some miracle, they will win this game. So I feel confident that the Chiefs can do that. So can the Ravens score 25 points? And, in the first half against the Texans, they didn't look great. And the Chiefs defense gets better as the game goes along. So I don't think that that's going to benefit Baltimore at all.
Yeah. Another thing, too, is this Chiefs defense is just kind of finding its stride. Did I say defense? Offense. Their offense is finding its stride at the right time. Because even though the Bills and the Dolphins defenses were beat up and not that good going into those games, the Bills secondary was still pretty good. I should mention that. But also, how many times in the regular season did we say, this defense sucks, the Chiefs should have a get-right game against them. They should look a lot better against them. And then they still look terrible. So you have to give the Chiefs offense credit. They've improved. They've taken a step forward. Rashee Rice is becoming more of a weapon. And the Ravens have a good secondary, but I'm wondering, how are they going to defend some of the schemes we've seen with, even Rashee Rice has been able to get open really easily against zone coverage, especially this postseason. And also even, against man, Rashee Rice is starting to look a little bit better, and you could always get him the ball on the screen or something. And, he's got the acceleration to turn it into a big game. I also looked up the, tight ends versus the Ravens defense in 2023, and most of them haven't done much, but there were two really good tight ends they went up against this year, David Njoku and George Kittle of the Browns and Niners. Both of them had over 100 yards versus the Ravens this year. And, Travis Kelce had a really good game against the Bills. I wonder if the Ravens are going to be able to cover Travis Kelce. I saw a bunch of Ravens. And let me tell you this, actually, real quick, not to veer too much off course, but I forgot how much this Ravens fan base likes to talk trash, because I've seen a lot of it on Twitter this week. And I remember when we had that little rivalry brewing with Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, Ravens fans were always such an annoying group of fans, because they're always like, you guys aren't going to beat us. We're too good. And then we beat them, and they're like, well, come to M&T Bank Stadium and beat us, and then we can talk. And then we went to M&T Bank in 2020, although it was a COVID year. We went there and we beat them. So I'm sure they're saying the same stuff again this time. And I've seen a bunch of trash talk about Kyle Hamilton, their safety, being really good. He's going to shut down Travis Kelce. And Kyle Hamilton's really good. He's one of the best young safeties in the league. He was all pro this year, but we've seen time and time again, even with Travis Kelce looking slower this year, that no one can truly shut down Travis Kelce. Not even the best defensive backs in the league have been able to shut down Travis Kelce. So I'd quiet down a little bit, Ravens fans. This is Travis Kelce in the playoffs.
Let him talk, man. Let him talk. Listen, we know from experience that when teams talk crap, it doesn't work out well for them. So I feel pretty good about this game, Josh. I really do. I think offensively, they have what it takes. And I didn't think that I'd be saying that at this point. I thought the Chiefs might win one playoff game and then get bounced. I didn't expect them to be playing in a 6th straight AFC Championship game, but here we are. So I think this team is starting to put it together, hit that stride at the right time offensively, and it's been really fun to watch. And so can Mahomes be as surgical and as great as he was against the Buffalo Bills against the Ravens? If he is, I think the Chiefs will be good enough to win.
I agree with you, man. And look, the Ravens were number 2 in the league in points per game this year, but we've seen this Chiefs defense. I know people call it Chiefs, though.
Yes.
I guess we can call it Chiefs too. But they went 6 straight weeks without letting an opponent score 20 points. So I'd be willing to bet that the Ravens fall below their season average in this game. And if they do, I think the Chiefs offense has enough to beat this Ravens team. I don't think the Chiefs came this far this year, even with everyone doubting them, just to lose in the AFC Championship game. This is Mahomes versus Lamar. I'm taking Mahomes. So, yeah, I think we did a good job here previewing this game, but now it's time for the score predictions. Michael, what's your prediction for this game? Who do you got? By how much?
I think this is going to be very close and probably pretty ugly just because these teams are so great. I have a weird feeling that it's going to be like 28-24, and it's going to come down to, a last-second touchdown. I think the Chiefs will win. I think that we hold them to sub 25, and I think that we'll do a better job at punching the ball in the end zone and not maybe give it to a guy like Mecole Hardman who coughs it up. So I think there will be much better at that, and if they can capitalize a couple more times like they didn't do in Buffalo, they will win this game. So I think 28-24 Chiefs win, go to their second Super Bowl in a row, and man, Patrick Mahomes does it again.
Yeah, so our score predictions are very similar. I'm going with the Chiefs 28, Ravens 23. I think that the Chiefs will actually get out to their first big lead in a while in this game. And you'll feel really good throughout the game. The Ravens will kind of make it interesting towards the end, but the Chiefs will come out on top. Their defense will get that clutch stop to seal it.
Yeah, I do think, though, that we're going to be sweating till the very end.
Sure, you always will. Any playoff game, if that's not a blowout, you're going to be sweating to the end. So, yeah, but I'm confident, man. I mean, I think this Chiefs team too, you can see the confidence rising with them. They're like, oh my gosh, we can do this. Like, we're in the AFC Championship game. Everyone said we had a down year. We weren't that good this year, but now we're here and we have an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl again. Like, we can do this. And I think you're seeing that happen out on the field in real time. Like, this Chiefs or not just their defense, their offense is feeling themselves, like this whole team. And I just think they're going to take this one.
The team believes, and belief is a powerful drug. And so I'm really excited to see what they could do this Sunday.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think that pretty much does it for our preview. But before we sign off, Michael, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you?
You guys can find me on YouTube at KC Sports Report and on social media at The Michael Darcy on Instagram and Twitter. Check me out on the Bleacher Report mobile app. The tag is Michael_Darcy. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
And that'll all be down in the description. It should be down there actually already. As for me, if you're here, why not subscribe? Make sure you like and share so more Chiefs fans can find this, And then you can check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com for more. But we'll see you all in the next one.